My friends, of all the doctrines in the Christian creed, none is more basic to our Catholic Christian faith than the doctrine of the Holy Trinity, but neither is any more difficult to comprehend or impossible to understand than the Trinity. I think that the reason for this is that in the New Testament, the Trinity is not really portrayed as a doctrine, but as a matter of fact, it's actually portrayed as an experience. And this is how the young Christian community experienced God, Father, Son, and Spirit, not as a doctrine of the faith, but as an experience. With the possible exception of St. Paul, none of the people who wrote the New Testament could really be considered theologians. They were just ordinary people who had come to know God in an extraordinary way. And the language of the Trinity was the only way that they could find to express that relationship that they had. Now, let's take a look briefly at how they experienced God. Let's begin just with God, the basic assumption of who God is. Now, all of those first followers of Jesus were Jews. They had believed in God from their earliest childhood. They had grown up with stories of creation, the Exodus, the Promised Land. They belonged to a people and a nation called Israel, and there was no way to account for that except through God. They also saw God in nature. When it rained, God was watering the earth. When there was a drought, God was punishing them for some sin. A bountiful harvest was a sign of God's favor. A skimpy harvest showed God's displeasure. Now, they also could see God in the stars. The sacred psalmist once wrote, "The heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament proclaims God's handiwork." The first followers of Israel, like us, have come to see the hand of God in everything. God is the creator, the sustainer of all things. Then, one day, their knowledge of God took a different dimension when they met a person named Jesus. At first, they saw him only as a human. But there was something so captivating about him that they became his disciples. The things he said to them about life really made sense. And when he spoke of God, there was a ring of truth to it. The more they listened to him teach, and the longer they watched him live, the more they were convinced that he wasn't just human. Then came that day when Peter spoke the conviction of all their hearts when he said, "You are the Messiah, the Son of the living God." Finally, they saw him die and then live again. By this time, it was impossible for them to think and talk about God without thinking and talking about Jesus. Then came the day when he was taken from their sight, and they stood on a mountain and watched him ascend. At first, this troubled them, but little by little they came to realize that they were not alone. God was with them. Christ was still with them. Then they remembered that that's exactly what Jesus had promised. He would never leave them. There would be another to abide with them always. They could sense that presence when they went to bed at night and when they got up in the morning. This presence was with them all day long. This presence gave them strength in their work and help in their daily living. This presence gave them courage and joy and love, and they came to know God through the Holy Spirit. And that is what the Trinity means to those first disciples, and that's what the Trinity means to you and me. It wasn't a doctrine, it was an experience. It was the way they had come to know God. And my prayer is that it will mean the same to you and to me.